Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Kicking Tables. Today, we'd like to welcome Michael Gnade from Rock Manor Games and Todd Walsh, the creator of Set a Watch, Swords of the Coin. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Michael,
Thanks.
I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your name, and I hope I did it right.
It was pretty good. It's Gnade.
Oh, it is? You do pronounce the G. My apologies. Yeah. Michael Gnade. Okay. Welcome, gentlemen. So you have a follow-up to Set a Watch coming out called Swords of the Coin, but why don't we take a step back and tell us, what is Set a Watch? Tell us what this game is.
Set a Watch is a cooperative fantasy puzzle combat game. It's based on, really, if anybody's familiar with Dungeons & Dragons, that part where you go to set up camp and you get jumped.
Okay.
Oh.
That's literally like, we're going to set up camp, and
yep. And we get attacked.
And you get attacked. So you described the game actually on your website as a cooperative adventure puzzle, which is a very unique style to describe yourself. Explain what that means, and what was the inspiration behind this game?
Well, I didn't want to do anything big RPG. I wanted something smaller that actually spends less time than a normal D&D session.
Right.
So I wanted to concentrate on the combat aspect. So I wanted the feel of the combat, because you weren't going to have necessarily the same mechanics as like a role-playing session.
Right.
So I wanted that feel of cooperativeness where you're like, oh, I can't attack this thing, you have to do that. And then after you do that, I can do this. So that's where the puzzle comes in, where you have this line of creatures, and you can't see them all at once, and you have to depend on the other players and the characters to do things in a certain order to be able to clear that line as they're attacking you.
Okay, so how does the actual gameplay work? How does the game progress? And are there different quests? Are there missions? Like how does you play the game?
Well, it works as you're basically going on a breakneck speed from location to location to stop these unhallowed creatures from being summoned back into the world. So in actual game terms, you're trying to survive 9 rounds.
Okay.
And 8 of those 9 rounds, one character goes into camp and does camp actions like chop wood for the fire so you can actually see more creatures, or scout ahead so you know what creatures are coming, things like that. And then the rest are going on watch and actually have to defeat the creatures for that round.
Okay. And that's the puzzle aspect also, as you mentioned before, is how you work together.
Who goes into camp, who stays out.
Right.
Yeah.
To best meet the goal of defeating those particular creatures.
Yeah, and you always roll your dice at the start of the round, so you have your dice rolls when you're making those decisions. So you may say, "Oh, I rolled really bad. I'll rest in camp because my ones aren't going to help us in combat."
Oh, well, that's a great mechanic. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
That's because a lot of games you have to make the decision and then roll, and if you roll crap, then you're toast.
Yeah, there's a lot of luck mitigation we've included in the game. So not only do you have agency to decide who goes into camp, you know what your roles are, but when you actually use your abilities, you have the ability to use a die either for a direct attack or to activate an ability. So if your rolls are a little less, you may save those to activate your abilities, and your higher rolls you use to attack.
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
I like that. That's more the puzzle aspect. You're assigning the dice into those puzzle slots.
Right, and the other thing is your abilities are also your health. So as you get hurt, you actually lose abilities. But alternatively, you can actually exhaust abilities to get extra uses out of them. So you can push yourself to do more in a round, but you're going to pay for it by being damaged.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
All right, so Swords of the Coin it's a standalone expansion for Set a Watch. What was the decision behind making it standalone and sort of not just the typical that forces to have the base game?
You want to take that one, Mike?
When did we decide that, Todd? I mean, we had the 4 new characters first, maybe?
Well, my original thought was I didn't want people to be able to pick it up off the shelf by accident and not be able to play it, get out the door.
Oh, okay.
I was afraid someone might get an expansion and then get it home and be like, oh, I didn't realize this was the expansion.
Also, we knew we needed new creatures and new locations. The variety in the original game with the 8 adventures is pretty good, but if you played the game a lot, the creature deck it only has, how many creatures do you have in the original one? 36 or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
and you use 30 of them, so there's not a ton of variety. Like, you sort of learn the creature deck pretty quickly. And the locations, there's a good amount, but if you play the game 3 or 4 times, you start to see
we did
repeats.
basically a whole nother game's worth of content. So why not make a standalone?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, what does Swords of the Coin bring to Set a Watch? What kind of new mechanics does it add to it? Is it still pretty much the same game, or are you adding new stuff to it that was not in the original?
Yes, to both. It is the same basic game, but you do have new mechanics. Like some of the characters have unique mechanics to them, and we also have money in the game now. So when you go to camp, do camp actions, you can collect coin for certain actions. So now you have an extra decision. Do I want to go and do this action because we need it to be done? Or do I want to do this other action which might give us some more money? And the reason that's important is because we also have items. So now you can upgrade your characters with items which you need to buy after collecting the money.
Yeah, so there's a brand new phase in the game. So from a rules standpoint, the game is pretty much exactly the same, except there's a new phase at the end of the camp phase, right before you go on watch, where you can spend any money you've collected at the traveling merchant, who has new items and wares that you can get. And those items are things like potions, which, you drink up a first strength potion.
Sure.
And it gives you a boost, and then it's discarded, and you just use it once per game. And there's other items like, a shield or swords that are basically a new ability. You have these 3 abilities with your character, and some of these new items act like abilities that you can you place a dice on them to activate them. And there's some abilities that are passive abilities, like your passive abilities from the original game as well. So it's a way for you to. I mean, it's still nothing like an RPG, but you get a little bit more character progression in this one through the items. And I would say, Todd can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the new characters are more complex than any of the characters from the original. Each of the new characters sort of has their own rules and wrinkles, and we actually have a page about them in the rule book for each one, because they each have things going on. There's a witch that has D4 dice, which are the lowest dice we've introduced in the game. But she also has a familiar card that is a crow on one side and a bat on one side and a cat on the other.
Nice.
So you actually have this extra,
cool.
and it acts sort of like a 4th dice. It's sort of like an attack dice, an extra attack dice, because your dice are so low. But you can actually use your abilities to flip it over, and it changes how far it can attack and how strong it is. And then the Barbarian has D12s, which is the highest dice we've ever had in the game. The original game only had D6s and D8s. And the Barbarian is obviously short range, and she has the disadvantage of not being able to use her dice to activate abilities. She has to actually exhaust the ability and take damage to actually use her rage to fight. So there's new puzzles with each of the new characters, and they all sort of have a small little wrinkle rule that makes them a little harder to learn. It's easier to start with some of the characters from the original game. The Trophy Hunter, every time he attacks and defeats a monster with direct attacks, he can collect that monster and take it out of the deck cycle as a trophy. And then his abilities all target off of those creatures he has. So if he kills a dragon and he has expertise, he then has expertise in the dragon. He does more damage to dragons because he's learned how to kill dragons.
Nice.
That's very cool.
All the characters work different and are a little bit. They all sort of have this wrinkle and some extra mechanics that make them a little bit more, deep and different, and introduce new things to the game.
It kind of sounds like Swords of the Coin is like Set a Watch the deluxe version.
Yeah, not to be confused with the original deluxe version from the original Kickstarter, but
fair. But it's got all those extras in it, which is really cool.
Well, we were responding to what people were giving us in feedback. This, I really like it, but I want to have more progression. I wish there was items, or I wish there was more characters. So we tried to address the things that people wanted to see in a sequel, and then that would be, if you have both, you would basically play the new game as your base and add all the old content into that one.
Yeah, it's completely it's mix and match however you want, and we're gonna have deck building rules in the rules, so you can make your own creature decks, and sort of challenge people and say, dude, I beat this creature deck 1 out of 10 times. I made it so hard. And you can post a list of the creatures you put in there to other players. The other thing I want to say too is like I sort of approached it. I'm a huge like living card game person. One of my favorite games of all time is Netrunner.
Oh, yes.
So I approached this a lot like sort of the living card game model, which is, this is like a new cycle in Set a Watch. The rules haven't changed, just like they don't change when there's a new like deluxe edition of Netrunner, a new set of cards from Netrunner. But those new cards have new things in them. There are new mechanics within those cards. There's some new rules with the merchant, obviously, and there's new cards that play off the merchant and earn coins and camp actions that earn you coins and things like that. So it is it's a new set more than it's a new game.
How difficult was it to balance when you're combining both boxes? How difficult was it to balance the different characters? If somebody picks characters from set one and from the new set, do they merge well together, or is somebody going to be like massively overpowered and somebody going, man, I wish I had those abilities?
Well, since it's cooperative, you're always relying on the guy next to you to pick up your slack.
Yeah,
you can't do everything yourself, no matter what character you pick. You need
Chico.
And sometimes you're in camp. So even if you're feeling strong, you got all your abilities up, you may not be able to carry it because you need to be the one in camp this turn.
Right.
So it's always depending on others. So yeah, there is some characters that have more nuance and more difficult to play, but I think I wanted to focus on what's your play style. What characters do you like to play?
Right. Okay.
And then make that character feel like that.
Did you put any thought, or was there ever an idea to, even though it is a standalone, but to include maybe new abilities for the old characters? Is there anything like that? If you own both, can you add anything to the original characters?
The closest thing in that now would be you getting items. So you would actually get items and you can add them to the older characters that you're playing with. So you can give them new combos and abilities with those.
Right.
That is something we're thinking about for the future, but that's depending on how we do now.
Of course.
Yes. It's a tough thing to balance too, because you look at, each character has 5 abilities and you get 3. So even if you play a character more than once, you can have some variability there. And, I think the tough thing, I think Todd will probably agree, when we're coming up with characters and balancing them, is you want each character to feel unique. We don't want to retread abilities. Yeah. And when we come up with a lot of crazy new abilities that we may give to a wizard, that becomes a new character with the witch. It's like it becomes so unique that it's like, this is such a different thing and you want it all to work together. Yeah. But those 2 abilities we may have given to the wizard become 5 abilities and we give them to the witch, and it becomes a set around those new mechanics. And it also, I think we're going to have so many characters. It's like if we add 1 ability to each of the old characters, that's like 10 new abilities.
How many characters?
There's 8 from the original, and there's 4 announced for Swords of the Coin, but there's a couple stretch goals that may pop up that feature some new characters.
Nice.
Very cool. That's nice amount of choice.
Now, the game can also be played solo, single player. Does the game differ in any way if you're playing it solo?
Mechanically, it's no different because you always have 4 characters in the game. What the player count is.
Okay.
So if you're playing solo, you're running all 4, but every round, one of them is going to be in camp. So you pick one, do your camp actions, then you only have 3, which is 9 dice worth of actions to deal with, which isn't really a lot. It's not a lot. It's not overwhelming.
So no matter how many players you have, there's always 4 characters in the game. 2 players, you're still controlling 4 characters in the game.
I'm surprised Todd's not going into the all the wasted time he spent trying to balance the game with different adventure accounts.
Well, I want everybody to hear my failures.
No, we just talk about the successes.
I didn't make the game because I spent so much time trying to make it expandable and contractible with player and accounts, and then at some point I said it doesn't make sense. Just make it 4 and balance the game at 4.
That's fair. Okay.
And having worked on it after that, I can tell you, and working on this expansion, that it's hard enough balancing all these characters and all abilities, knowing that you're going to have 9 dice every round.
Yeah.
Let alone if that were changing.
Because in essence, it's a survival game.
Right.
You have a certain amount of resources to go from beginning to end, and it's how you manage those resources. So if you have things dropping in and out, you're having massive changes of resources available.
Yeah.
which changes how difficult a game can be.
Yeah.
And the ability, and it's not just that, because I mean, some people would say, "Oh, look at Marvel Champions. They just do like 7 hit points per player. So if you play with 3 players, it's 21 points." But it's not like the game isn't like that, because the ability economy and how you trigger off of each other and work together as a team is so important. Like Todd was saying, you want to feel like the character you are. So some characters aren't great at removing creatures. Like they're awesome at getting everyone else information about what's coming in the darkness. They're great at moving things around and changing the order of the line, or supporting, boosting other people's dice. And you can't play single player with a character like that. You can't play a solo game with just that character who's only good at support and have it be equal to playing like the knight who's really good at killing creatures. Like,
right.
The roles are supposed to be different for a reason, and it feels different for a reason.
And who plays D&D by themselves anyway, right?
Right. Unless you're playing Gloomhaven.
Well, okay, fair.
You could do it there.
That's fair.
You can play Set a Watch by yourself. I mean, listen, if you get over the hump of controlling more than one adventurer, Set a Watch is a great solo experience. I mean, there's tons of people who are really into it for that. If you hate being more than one character and you want to really feel like you're just one person, you shouldn't play Set a Watch solo. I mean, just play a 4-player.
I don't understand that person, because they probably played Baldur's Gate on their computer and had no problem running a whole party.
True.
So the original game going to be available through the Kickstarter campaign as well?
It is, and we're going to reprint the deluxe version. The deluxe version was a Kickstarter exclusive. Basically, the Knight and Bard characters were only offered directly through us or through the Kickstarter. So the deluxe editions, obviously went out to Kickstarter backers, and then we took deluxe editions around when conventions existed, and that was a thing you could do in person. We took deluxe editions around with us, and we've sold out of them. So we're going to be reprinting that deluxe edition as well.
Yeah, back in the day when people actually met in person.
Yeah, when you could play games around a table and all that kind of nice stuff.
So your Kickstarter begins September 22nd. That is actually tomorrow. And can you give us a sneak peek at some of your stretch goals? You want to share any of them, or are they all secret right now?
On day one, so if it's tomorrow, you'll see that just like we did in the last Kickstarter, we have a pretty lofty stretch goal. We're calling it, last time we called it the Quest for the Bard. This time it's the Quest for the Monk. So we have a blind monk character who actually is a lot more, adds a lot more components to the game than the knight did, because the monk can upgrade and change his dice as he plays. So he starts as a D6 character, but he can go to camp and meditate and upgrade his dice to D6s, D8s, D10s, and then up to D10s potentially. So he sort of is an engine building character, and we're going to have that quest up. It's not a stretch goal we're going to hit on day one, but if it's anything like the last campaign, we will hit it at some point.
Excellent.
And then we are going to have a funded on day one stretch goal up when the thing launches, which is a new final location. So the only location you pick in a game of Set a Watch is the final location. It's sort of the boss battle when no one rests in camp, everyone fights. And the original game had 3 final locations, and we have an additional final location outside of the one that's included in the new game. That's actually a riff on one of the original final locations. We had like a citadel or something, and this is the broken sanctuary or something like that, the broken altar.
Awesome.
So it's you're going back to the citadel that you fought in the last game as a final location, and the altar inside has been broken, and evil is sort of seeping out. So if we fund on the first day, you can unlock that new location for people.
That is awesome. So check out Set a Watch, Swords of the Coin on Kickstarter starting September 22nd. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with your campaign. It sounds amazing.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and back Set a Watch, Swords of the Coin. If you get a chance, hit below, hit subscribe. Thanks a lot.